Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Let's begin this hour in New York, where the fate of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs will soon be in the hands of the jury. Combs stands accused of using his fame and fortune to run a criminal enterprise involving coercion, violence, and sex trafficking. Now, throughout the trial, jurors heard from several of Combs's former girlfriends who all testified that they felt forced to engage in so-called freak-offs that would often last for days. Today, the federal government is delivering its closing argument, and we expect to hear from the defense tomorrow. I am so excited to announce our own Julie Grant is live in New York, right outside the federal courthouse. You brought us your show there this morning, but tell us now, Julie, what's the latest?
Hi, Judge. Good afternoon. It's great to join you here. Well, it is a very windy afternoon here in New York City. It's been very hot the last couple of days, oppressively hot, and now it's finally cooling down a little bit, and it cooled down for the lunch break. Things are going to be starting back up any minute now to continue with those closing arguments. The government indicating they intend to take most of the day. 4 hours is the allotment, Judge, for the closing arguments for each side. And tomorrow, as you noted, it'll be the defense's turn. And then, of course, the government has a chance for rebuttal. And I have to tell you, Judge Ashley, Diddy looks very relaxed and very calm. So watching him closely, there was a moment when he first came into the courtroom I would love to tell you about. He comes in and he walks very slowly. He looks a little bit heavier these days than he has in past videos and photographs, and that would stand to reason, being incarcerated for the last 9 months. He's wearing a light sweater. It's so light gray, like a stone color, almost looks white from far away, and it kind of matches his hair, which is largely white and gray. He doesn't have that short black hair that he's had for so many years. It's much longer. He's got a goatee going on his chin, and then he walks in the courtroom taking his time. He comes around counsel table to sit next to Brian Steele, and before he takes a seat, he turns around and looks at the gallery. His mother is sitting there. His children are all sitting there. They're all dressed beautifully and just a couple rows behind where he's sitting, and he puts his fist right up to the middle of his chest, almost to indicate a sign of love, a sign of encouragement, a sign of support. As he looks back at them, he puts his fist to his chest, and they look at him, and no words are exchanged, but Ashley, it was a moment. It was one of those moments that signified something like, here we go. This is the time. You're all here for me, and I love you. That was what I got from just that little physical gesture that he made.
Wow. Julie, I can picture it. As you've described it, I can picture every minute of it. And I have to ask you this, and we haven't had a chance yet to talk about the legalities, but do you think he's feeling more confident because of what happened yesterday? And by that, I mean the fact that the government streamlined jury instructions. And so there's no confusion. There were viewers who said, oh, they've dropped charges. They didn't drop any charges, but they did streamline those jury instructions under the racketeering to get rid of some of them. For instance, one of the kidnappings, to get rid of the arson, so that those could be not used as predicate or grounds for finding racketeering. Do you think that has buoyed him, perhaps?
Maybe, Judge, because he looks very confident. He sits there leaning back in his chair. Through most of the arguments that I watched, he was leaning back, legs spread out in front of him, his arms down, kind of by his sides with his hands folded in his lap. A very, very relaxed, comfortable impression he's giving. He doesn't appear overly concerned to me, just appears to be calm and cool and collected. And I'm so glad you brought up, Judge, that issue with the jury instructions, because I have some new information for you and all of our wonderful courties at home about this. So as soon as the prosecutor started, the government right away talked about maybe the first or second line I'm looking at my notes of the closing argument. She noted the arson with Kid Cudi's car and the kidnapping, 2 instances of it with Capricorn Clark. And I thought to myself, well, wait a second. This goes against all of the reporting that was out there yesterday. I mean, I was seeing other outlets incorrectly saying that charges were dropped. We at Court TV reported that things were clarified, simplified. And I have the answer for you, Judge. Here, I got to the bottom of it. So in the indictment, they noted attempted kidnapping, attempted arson. They hedged it a bit. And once they got through the evidence, those federal prosecutors must have said, you know what, we believe we've proven this. So they must have eliminated the attempt instructions pertaining to both of those predicate offenses. And they're going forward with arson and 2 instances of kidnapping pertaining to Diddy's assistant, Capricorn Clark, as predicate crimes. So they're moving full steam ahead. The reporting that was out there was a lot of reporting I saw in other places that had some misinformation, and I could see why it would be confusing. And I'm sure you can too, Judge. You know how it is with the instructions and how every little word matters. It seems to me they eliminated the word attempted so that they can go forward with those crimes. And the government noted, Judge, 8 different predicate offenses. In addition to those 2, they also noted drug distribution, bribery, sex trafficking, transportation to commit prostitution, forced labor, and witness tampering and obstruction. And the jury just needs to believe 2 occurred in a 10-year period.
Listen, Julie, I'm so thrilled that you are there for us to witness these things firsthand, to help explain that, because those are nuances that make a difference in terms of what the jury can decide. So thank you, my friend, for that great clarification. Before you go, I must ask you this. What's next? Where are we in the closing arguments?
Sure. So the government seems to me, Ashley, to be going through the indictment count by count, starting at count 1, the racketeering conspiracy. They explained it beautifully. We've been saying all along about how this isn't a complicated case. It's just kind of a strange case. The government did a beautiful job in explaining that, hey, we might think of RICO cases as mob cases, but let's remember, all it takes is a few individuals acting as a group to commit crimes for that common purpose, and that is the furtherance of the goals of the enterprise leader, which they're accusing Diddy of being. And so they went through all of that and very simply explained how you get racketeering, how you get those predicate offenses. They married the facts with the law. And so they seem to be going count by count. Where we left off before lunch was with sex trafficking. And as you know, Judge, we've got 2 counts of that pertaining to Jane, Diddy's girlfriend up until present day, and his artist and former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. So I would imagine that that's going to continue after this lunch break, as will the counts pertaining to the transportation to commit those crimes of prostitution, the crossing of state lines, which seems to be pretty clearly established by the federal government.
All right. Thank you so much, Julie Grant. I know you're going to be doing hits throughout the day to bring us all of the latest, but it's also my understanding perhaps you'll be bringing us a show later. Tell us a little bit more.
Yes, Judge. So this evening, we're doing a special Diddy show at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be outside of the courthouse with Kelly Craft, who's also here doing reporting throughout the day. And so we'll be together. And Judge, we thought it would be a great idea if we kind of compare notes. Today, you know, I've taken a lot of pages of notes as I've been inside of the courthouse, and Kelly has too. And so we're going to do a debrief with our viewing audience about what we've seen today and whether we think the government's arguments have been effective, Judge.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julie Grant. Look forward to this evening and great, excellent current news from you. No surprise. Thank you very much for coming on with us. Now, let me welcome my guest for this hour, trial and family law attorney Michelle Thomas. Michelle, weigh in on, and I love Julie's breakdown of the charges, right? All it did was streamline, take out some things, but this jury has a lot to think about, and they can check off on the form which of the things they find him guilty of that are predicate acts for the racketeering.
Yeah, good afternoon, Judge Ashley, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I think the prosecution was right to try to streamline the predicate acts on the jury instructions for the jury because there are so many details that they have to go over. And I think it's important to note that the jurors don't have to agree on which of the predicate acts would form the basis of the racketeering charge. They just have to agree that two of them, as Julie said, have occurred within the last 10 years. That being said, there was a lot of testimony, but did the testimony directly link Diddy to the actual conduct? There was a lot of reckless behaviors, a lot of disgusting behaviors, some would say, but were they criminal behaviors? I think that remains to be seen.
Well, now, and you made a really interesting point, which is the jury doesn't have to unanimously decide each of the predicating acts. And so to me, that makes it a little bit easier. Maybe you have 3 jurors who find it was this and 2 who find it was this, and only 2 acts are required. So number 1, does that make it easier for the jury? But number 2, do you think the jury may look at any of these things? And as we've been long talking about, a lot of these things are obviously crimes, right? And you see what he does to Cassie Ventura on that video. Clearly assault, clearly domestic violence. But are they potentially going to say that's what that is and it doesn't rise to the level of these federal racketeering charges, for instance?
Well, number 1, certainly it would make it easier for the jurors to reach a decision when they don't have to unanimously agree as to which of the underlying predicate charges or offenses would form the basis of the racketeering charge. That being said, you still have to prove that there was a criminal enterprise designed to commit these crimes. And I don't know that the prosecution proved that. And I think there certainly all we need is one juror to say they disagree that the prosecution proved that, and he will be acquitted because his business was for the purpose of making music, selling alcohol, clothing lines, and so forth. The behaviors that we're talking about are really in his personal life, as they allege the celebrity lifestyle that he led that many may not agree with. But is it a criminal enterprise? I think the jury can struggle with that question.
Yeah, I think you may be right. Let's listen together because during the charge conference, there was discussion by the attorney about the sex trafficking. I want to listen to that and get your thoughts.
Counts 2 and 4.
Yes, Your Honor. So as to sex trafficking, we have a similar objection as was raised to forced labor about the instruction related to physical restraint not being required. I assume Your Honor would make the same ruling here, but we would understand that the defense would not be making that argument, as was the same case for forced labor.
And the defense is not going to make that argument that physical restraint is required for purposes of sex trafficking.
No, Your Honor.
All right, physical restraint, defense not making that argument, but it makes me think of consent. So, Michelle, how does the consent piece play into this? If a jury believes, if a jury believes that these individual women who have testified did it by consent, which may be a stretch, but if they believe that, how does that affect this case?
If they believe that, then the prosecution is going to have a hard time getting a conviction on the sex trafficking charges because you have to show that the women or people were engaged in these sexual acts for commercial purposes by force, by coercion, and that would be undermined if they believe it's consensual. So that has been a defense's position to advance that it was all a consensual act, that these women made the choices to be present and to participate of their own volition. Certainly, one could argue that they did not, and the prosecution put on the sex trauma expert to say even if something looks like consent, it may not actually be consent. It may be coercion because of those power dynamics. But I think it undermines that sex trafficking charge if they believe it's consensual.
If they do, I would agree with you.